Hi, alchemists, and welcome back to another episode of the Elemental Educator. I'm your host, Tyler, and if you're joining us for the first time, thank you so very much for tuning in, and welcome to a place where we redefine leadership and challenge the status quo. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Elemental Educator on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast from, and check out our website, elementaleducator.com. There you'll find this podcast, blog posts, discussion forums, a contact link to join us for an episode as a guest, and our Elemental Educator workshops that offer insightful, empowering, and highly engaging professional development. Today we are joined by Danny, author of The Wealthy Teacher, known for his work helping teachers attain financial freedom. I can't wait to dive into this episode with Danny, where we unpack empowering freedom. So get ready to let the alchemy of education ignite your passion for learning.
This is the Elemental Educator, the podcast where we kindle the fires of dialogue with the alchemists of education. We're here to embark on a journey where ancient wisdom meets the contemporary world of education. On Elemental Educator, we dive into the deep waters of adaptability, feel the grounding earth of core values, ride the swift winds of change, and ignite the fiery spirit of risk-taking. Fire, earth, wind, water. This is the Elemental Educator. And now your host, Tyler Como.
All right, alchemists, in this episode of the Elemental Educator, I'm thrilled to welcome Danny, a seasoned expert in personal finance and an author of multiple books on the subject. Danny's mission is to empower individuals and families to achieve financial stability and success, regardless of their income. Danny, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Tyler, thanks so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking.
Can't wait to unpack this. I want to start with getting to understand who you are and your experience. And so if you don't mind, I'd love to be walked through where you are now and what events unfolded to get you there.
Sure, yeah. So I started off my career as I guess I was first grade teacher. My wife was a first grade teacher as well. So very fast courtship. I actually met her when I was doing my student teaching. That's what we do here in the States. I'm not sure up there how that works, but met her then, got engaged within a few months, married June of the following year. And then we actually started off our married lives teaching abroad at an American international school in Krakow, Poland. We spent 2 years there. Probably just definitely laid the foundation for our marital success, but also our financial success as well. Just learned to live less, exposed to a different culture over there. So when we went over there, it was about 11 years removed from communist rule. So it wasn't, people still live very frugally over there. And I think at that time, in the States, a lot of people live way above their means, trying to keep up with people, trying to spending more than they earn, basically. But over there, we saw the different side where I think in North America, it's great. We work hard and we try to achieve. But over there, a lot of people, it just seemed like they stopped and smelled the roses a little bit and took their time with stuff, appreciated things. So it was great to be immersed in that culture for 2 years. And those beliefs held with us after 2 years when we moved home. And then we started off when we moved back to the States, still continued to teach first grade. And then after, I guess, 2 years of teaching, Tracy had our first daughter, Ava. And we felt very strongly about Tracy being able to stay home. Firsthand how tough it can be to teach. And we just felt like it would be best for our family for her to be able to stay home and focus solely on Ava. And at the time, so I'm making at that time about $42,000 a year as a first grade teacher. So we weren't sure how long we would be able to do it. We just had always lived below our means and tried to save money. 1 year turned into 8 years, and we added another daughter to the mix. So we were able to do it on my teacher's salary for 8 years. And we currently sit right now, we have no debt except our mortgage. We're on track for retirement, have an emergency fund in place. But most importantly, I like to share with others is that we live wealthy lives and we don't make a large salary. Still don't make, we're making more now than we did before, but still not in the scheme of things, not a large salary. But we've given ourselves options. And I think because from the start, we financially prepared for these times, that we have options. And that to me is what money management is all about, is just giving yourself options to do things that you feel passionate about.
So when you made your trip, I'm sorry, I've never heard of where you've gone before. Where did you go?
Krakow, Poland. Obviously in Poland, second biggest city behind Warsaw. So South Poland. So just really cool.
Krakow, hey?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to put that on the list of places I want to eventually
Oh, it
go.
is probably so we traveled to probably 12 countries. That was still my favorite. It was just that we had the largest big city center in Europe. Just very in Poland, a lot of people think, oh, it's black and white. It's such a gorgeous country, so pretty. People,
Yeah.
yeah. I think they've just gotten a bad rap over the years, being invaded so much over history, but it's a gorgeous country. And at that time we were there, the
Right.
cost of living was really low. So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely recommend it.
It's enticing for sure. So you make this trip to Krakow, and you said that you learned a different lifestyle,
Hmm.
and that it actually transferred back to when you moved back. So did that impact how you interacted with your kids when you worked with them and you taught them as well?
Sure. So over there in the States at the time, I think class sizes in my first grade class had about 24 students. So over there, it was lower class sizes. I think I had 12, so half of it. So you really could, as a former educator, like when you have lower class sizes, you, especially in the elementary age, first grade, key year, learning how to read, a lot of those. So I was able to personalize a lot of stuff when you only had 12 kids. So I brought that back to me when I taught first grade here in the States, even though I had more students. I still tried to make it unique and tried to meet one on one with the students when I could. Obviously, when you have more students, it's a little more difficult. But no, just keeping that in mind, it definitely changed how I thought about teaching. And I saw firsthand the impact. We all get into teaching because we want to change the world. That's most of us don't do it for the money. If you did, someone lied to you along the way. It brought back to light of, okay, why I did choose to teach, because I could see the difference I was making right away. So yes, I brought that kind of back to me, and it just kept me going. Because yeah, you know how it is. There's some days that definitely you're like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I making a difference? Am I helping my students? So over there, I got to see it firsthand a little bit faster than we normally do.
You're so right that when you're in a classroom of 12 kids, it's a lot easier to build that personal connection, that relationship with 12 than it is with 24. And we're even in a place now where we're upwards of 30 to 40.
Right.
And what does that look like? So I'm assuming that transition and that aspiration wasn't just an easy change to all of a sudden care about double the amount of kids. How did you make that work?
Sure. I just kept in mind, and I think over there it helped me. We got to do write our own curriculum basically. So there was no set curriculum, so we got to do what was right for the kids. And I think, and I'm sure it's similar in most places where what you teach is controlled by higher ups, and sometimes it doesn't always make sense. So your classroom better than anyone else. So I think I brought that back to and didn't sweat the small stuff because I knew the overall thing. Okay, what I'm doing is right. I know what I'm doing. I've had success doing it the past 2 years teaching these kids. So I know what works. So I held that to it. And of course, when someone higher up tells you what you got to do, you check the box and you do what you have to do. But then I also focus, okay, how do I know I can most effectively reach kids? What's the most important thing? And kept my eyes on that.
And that's something that I love to tell teachers all the time is you're obligated to teach your program of study, but how you go about teaching it and the methods you use and the interactions you have, that's up to you. That's your uniqueness of a teacher. And that's what makes you different. And that's how you can put kids first and really stand out and embrace the idea of a relational person and getting away from transactional leadership and become a transformational teacher leader in your classrooms. You also alluded to pay wasn't that great, and you learned to live learn to live a very frugal lifestyle. That to me sounds like there's a path of adversity. That sounds to me like there was a path of difficult choices that have to be made as well.
Sure.
How did you and your family at that point go about navigating what the right choices were? And then not just living in sorrow or sulking about the choices, but looking forward.
Absolutely. It's a great question, Tyler. So the thing is, we focused on what was right for us. So we felt strongly that Tracy, my wife, should stay home when we had children. We didn't do what was right for our neighbor. We didn't do what was right for our brother in law. We did what was right for our family. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. First off, especially when it comes to our finances, you have to have a plan in place. If you aim for nothing, you hit it every time. So you have to know what you're aiming for and you have to do what's right for you and your family. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. First off, they don't have a plan. But secondly, they're trying to please other people. And for me at the time, the I felt the strongest in it was such a great experience to have Tracy be able to stay home and raise both of our daughters. So I'm like anyone. I pull up next to someone, and at that time, no Tesla. So like they pull up in a Mercedes. Of course I wanted it. Who doesn't? But then I thought to myself, I could have this. I could have nicer things, but something would have to change. Either A, I'd have to get out of teaching and get a higher paying job. B, I would have to get a second job and see less of my family. Or C, Tracy would have to go back to work. And none of that choice of a car or whatever it may be, none of that made me want to change what we were doing because we felt passionate about, we knew we were on the right path and this was what was right for our family. So I think that's really what helped us. And yes, did we sacrifice? Of course we did. Date night some nights consisted of a sandwich at Subway and a rental movie. Like we didn't do a lot of extravagant things.
That sounds like a perfect night, by the way.
Right at the time, and it was. So, but it was what was right for us. And some people they need to take the yearly vacation and go out. If that's what's right for you, do it. I'm all for it. But I think for a lot of us, we try to aim to please other people's and instead of doing what is right for us. And I think that was the biggest thing. And probably living in Poland for 2 years was once again it strengthened our marriage because we relied on each other. And this was way before cell phones. We called home once a week via a calling card. We had dial-up internet at the time, so we just didn't. We relied on each other a lot, and I think that's what strengthened our marriage and our goals. And that's we worked together as a couple on, hey, what do we represent? What do we want to become as a family? And we just worked on that.
And you make it sound so easy, but it is important to note that journey is hard. That journey needs transparent communication. That journey needs a partner that is on the same page. How did you navigate the waters of that conversation with your partner around this is what it needs to look like?
Conversation, and that's the key. I think in any relationship you have to talk and communicate, and especially when it comes to finances, most people come into a relationship thinking differently, and usually a lot of times one person is more of the saver and one person is more of the spender. That's just and that's fine. So like in our relationship, Tracy was more of the spender, I was more of the saver, but we've learned from each other too, and now I'm not as tight. There are times now that we have money, like I'll get off the wallet and we'll take a nice vacation because we have the money we've saved up to do. But I think we've learned from each other and grown. But at the end of the day, we had to say, okay, what is important for us together? We had to come together and make common goals and then work together to achieve them. So I think the communication was the biggest thing. Some people feel they don't want to be put on an allowance, right? So obviously, when we lived on a lot less, we couldn't spend, but we knew the reasons why. So it wasn't like, hey, no, you can't buy that because I'm saying so. No, these are the goals that we're working on. And if we buy this, then it's going to hurt us when we try to achieve those goals and accomplishing them. So I think it just goes back to that open dialogue. And unfortunately, especially when it comes to money, for many, it remains this taboo topic. No one wants to talk about it. But money dictates. I don't want to say it's the end all be all because it isn't, but money does dictate many of the things that we're going to be able to do in life. So we have to, get real about it and discuss it.
And is this where the wealthy teacher came from?
Yeah, so actually, my first book it came out way back in 2007. And the idea behind that, I had colleagues at that time. Ava was one, Tracy was staying at home. And people were like, gosh, how are you guys doing it on a teacher salary? You should write a book. And I knew nothing at that time. Once again, just a first grade teacher. I knew nothing about how to write a book, publish a book, whatever. So I sat down, I just started writing. I don't know why. And after a few months, had words on paper. And at that time, the publishing industry was completely different than it is now. So we had to pay upfront. It was like $4,000 at that time to have the book published. And there were ways.
And this was a bright financial
This
future. That was the
was
first
how
one?
to survive and perhaps thrive on a teacher's salary. So it was with some.
There we
It
go.
was yeah. And actually, I think the company it got published is out of business now. Once again, way back, but it gave me opportunities. So that book came out in '07. Here in the States, '08, '09, we were hit with the Great Recession. A lot of people went down. So here was this real life school teacher raising a family with two kids on a salary. So then I was fortunate enough, I got a lot of media exposure, national television, things like that. So that led me to, I'm like, you know what, I have a better book in me. Like anything you do, you want to improve. So then that first book, now I've written 4 other books. I have a total of 5 books. So just try to keep improving. But just over the course of time, those books have led to opportunities and just different things. So yeah, it's just been a fun journey. But the basic principle behind all my books is basically to show others that this former school teacher can do it. You can as well.
What's the first actionable step that you always recommend somebody takes when they're looking to have financial freedom?
Sure. First, and we mentioned it before, you have to have a plan. So, what are your goals? So, we have to figure out what we're aiming for to begin with. But secondly, all financial decisions, and people don't like this word, we call it the B word, the budget. People hate that word. People feel a budget is like a diet, it restricts them. But all financial decisions will stem from the budget. Most of us aren't like Jeff Bezos, where we have enough money where we can fly to outer space and we're so bored. So we have to live on a set amount. So having a budget, and if you don't like that word, call it a spending plan, change the semantics, but it shows you exactly where your money is being spent. And you can relate in education. There's not a lot of money that comes in. So you have to know how every dollar is being spent. So when you track your spending, you can see, maybe do it for 3 months. I recommend, because months have different things, but then you can see, oh, we went out to dinner 5 times this month, or we spent, whatever it may be, you make it personal to you. I could give all general tips on how to save. It may not relate to you. Not everyone goes to Starbucks every morning, but you have to see, okay, this is where my money is going. And then once again, you go back to, what do we want to achieve? Then you can eliminate those things that aren't helping you achieve your goals. And once again, most of us can't have it all. So if that daily latte means a lot to you, that's fine, but you may not be able to eat dinner out that night, or whatever it may be. But you just have to know where your money is going. And then once you do that, you can cut back in certain areas and then have it work towards what your goals are.
Writing out the plan is so important, just as I drink from my $2 coffee cup every
Hey,
day.
but once again, that's fine. That brings you, and there's a thing right now, a big term here in finance is value based spending. So you spend money based on what your values are. And we all know how horrible 2020 was. So a lot of people, they need a motivational, and if it's that daily latte, so be it. That's fine. But then once again, you just have to know, okay, if I do this, then I may not be able to do this later on.
So that foundational piece of advice that you give about starting by creating your budget or your financial plan, we can call it what we want to call it. Did that impact the way that you started planning for your year, planning for your kids, and how you taught them how to plan?
Absolutely. We planned from the get go. So we got married in June, moved to Poland in August. But the 2 years over there, we knew we signed a 2 year contract. So we knew we'd be coming home after 2 years. So we saved every month. We set amount, automatically saved money because we wanted money to put on down payment on a house, cars, those types of things. So then it put us in a position, because we knew when we moved home, we wanted Tracy to be able to stay home at some point. Obviously, living on a teacher salary, we couldn't have a large mortgage, couldn't have car payments, those types of things. So we planned. So we had one car. And here in the States, that's really tough. So we had one car for 4 years. And I will say here right now, so my daughter just turned 20. So we paid that car off when she was born. So we haven't had a car payment in 20 years. So I look at that, and that's not common here. And the new car average price of a new car payment, the monthly car payment for a new car here in the States, the average amount is like $750 a month. So you think we've saved that amount over the course of 20 years because we don't buy new cars. So that's just one thing that we do, but we just planned ahead. We bought a smaller home. We knew, okay, we can't have a high mortgage payment here because we're trying to live on a teacher's salary. So we just had the financial plan for us. Yes, any decision we made, we were looking, okay, at the future. How is this going to impact us a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road? But then also, yes, with our girls, we try to teach the same thing. It's a little difficult. Teenage daughters can be a little. Well, my oldest just turned 20, but yes, we try to instill those principles in them. And I think it is tough right now for the younger generation. I know the price of my first house, and you're not finding that here in the States anytime soon because
You're not finding it in Canada
yeah,
either.
it's
So
just it's great. So I think it's harder for their generation. I think, especially, I think of someone that's in their 30s or late 20s. You think you went through two crazy things that are like once in a lifetime between COVID and '07, '08, '09 here in the States. It's like those are just things that usually don't happen. So I think for them, it's just basically you do have to have, if you have these sound financial principles going into it, then hopefully you'll have enough margin to withstand some of these bumps. No one can control a pandemic. No one can control the world, but you can control how much you have in a savings account. You can control how much you're spending because the next catastrophe could just be right around the corner, whether we control it or we don't control it. So we just have to be prepared for those things.
And when you were still a classroom teacher, how did it impact your classroom and your students?
What's that? The planning or
Just your value here around establishing communication plans, establishing the idea of creating your budget line,
yeah.
right? How did that impact the way that you enacted yourself as a teacher?
Yeah, I mean, you think when you have the key lessons that you're trying to teach, that's like your financial principles, right? So then everything is based on that. Of okay, what is the objective I'm trying to teach today to the students, and then you break it down like you would with finances to achieve that ultimate goal, and you take the steps. For most lessons, especially in finance as well, it doesn't get accomplished like that. So we have to build on things, and yeah, you can relate easily teaching a lesson to the financial plan because they build on each other to achieve that ultimate goal.
Thank you for sharing. You're absolutely right. I feel like If I could just translate my unit year lesson plans towards budget planning, man, I would be a wicked budget planner. Although after year 5, I hear some teachers stop making those plans altogether.
Sure, sure. And the cool thing is, there was a study done. It was a couple years ago here in the States of like millionaires, and I forget how many millionaires they studied, but one of the top five demographics that become millionaires are teachers. As crazy as that sounds, because we think of teachers, oh, they don't make much, but because many teachers look at things systematically when it comes to their classroom, a lot of them do the same thing when it comes to their finances. It's like this step by step that you follow. And if you take the right financial steps, over time, you're going to have money and you could be a millionaire. You invest starting at age 25, you invest like $200 a month and you earn about 9%. That's what the stock market averages. You do that until you're 65, you'll have $1 million. It's very
Yep.
systematically. And I think teachers are good at that because that's what we do every day in the classroom.
That's similar to the Warren Buffett system, right? Is the long-term
Sure,
investment game.
sure.
And I think it's important to note a little caveat there. It's not the teacher's salary that makes them the millionaire. It's the knowledge that they gain from their profession that sets them up for financial success because they learn things and they preach things all day in their classrooms: how to be responsible, how to make a plan,
Right.
how to do the right thing, how to do less with
Yeah.
more, or sorry, how to do more. I got to
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
right way: how to do
Yeah.
more with less. Think about budget cuts, think about supplies cuts, the cost of what teachers have to put up with. Matt, they're the ultimate wizards when it comes to making things work.
Yes.
They're getting increased class sizes, they're getting decreased budgets, right? And yet here we are doing all of these really cool, creative, and powerful things. So, with all of that, you stepped away from teaching,
Mhm.
and that became a big risk for you. So, when you stepped away, why did you do it?
Great question. Actually, I've stepped away a couple of times. One was 10 years ago. I got into the financial services industry, so I was selling into stocks, mutual funds, but it was actually helping teachers. I was in a company that we went around here in the States and we talked to teachers about their supplemental retirement savings plans. That one just wasn't the right fit for me, just many reasons. But then I got back into the classroom and I intended on staying. Like I taught special ed mostly. Like I said, started off in elementary, but probably the last 10 years I taught here in the States, what's called a profound special needs class. So my students had IQs under 30. So tube fed, wheelchairs, they didn't speak. But I felt very blessed. Like I had the patience to do it. I felt, I was making a difference every day. So I intended on just doing that. Like I'm like, okay, I'm good to go. This is where God's calling me, and this is what I need to do. And out of the blue, the company I'm working with now, just through a couple connections from my job 10 years ago, they had me come and do a couple presentations. They were presenting to a school district, so I know how to talk to teachers about money. And then it just turned into we're like, hey, we want to bring you on full time. And I just once again, I'm a spiritual person, so I just prayed about, hey, what direction is this the right direction? And I just felt now the company I'm with, Mentoro, I just felt I could probably have a greater impact doing this. I feel like that's what I was called to do right now. Yeah, it was a risk. I was very content teaching. I felt like I was giving my all every day, but I just tried to follow a plan where I thought I could impact more people. And yeah, who knows? I might end up in the classroom one day again. I never know. I just try to follow, take the signs and see where it leads me. But I think here it is once again. For us, and especially now, make more than I did teaching. Not a lot more, but make more. My wife has moved up in the county. She was a teacher, and now she's in the county office doing instructional technology. So we are making more money now, but we've looked at money, and I mentioned at the beginning of take given us the ability to take advantage of opportunities. So that's where we have enough financial margin in our lives that if something does call and we feel like, hey, this is what we're supposed to do, we're able to do that. And it doesn't matter the salary. We can't take drastic. Now I have one in college. I'll have another one in a couple of years. So can't go way back there. But if it's, a $10,000, $15,000 pay cut to do something that we feel we're called to do, we have the margin to be able to do. And I think that's the big key, especially even in education. I know a lot of teachers do, they feel that burnout, especially you mentioned like after 5 years, 6 years, oh, I can't do this. For us, because we had money in the bank, we always knew, you know what, I can leave if I want to. We have the ability. So then it's just a different mindset of I don't have to work. I get to work because I know any day I could leave. And granted, if you have an emergency fund in place, a year emergency fund, you could quit for a year technically. Not going to, but just knowing that in the back of your head, it makes some of those day to day things, especially as the life of an educator that get thrown at us, it makes it a little bit easier because, hey, I do have options. If it does get bad enough, I can go do something else.
And you're so right on that. I don't know how the contract system works in specific states, but where I am, you're never given a continuing contract right out of the gate unless you're something very incredible and you rock your interview along the lines too. It typically goes you're on a temporary or a probationary
Hmm.
contract. And there's fear. There's so much fear because you can be on those 5, 6. I know some people that have been on those contracts and bounced around for 8, 9 years. They've worked every single year. They've had a full time job. They've met all of the requirements, but they don't have the stability of a contract. And that's a scary
Right.
thing to get to a point of now you're 8 years into teaching and on a whim's notice, they can let you go. And you're sitting there going, "Well, I can't really be myself. I have to conform to get my contract and be who they want me to be so that I can stick around for a little bit."
Yeah, we're
See,
all at a whim. COVID, you think about that. No control over any of us. It shut down countries. So, and teachers weren't furloughed, but I know other people that were. And I look at it too, and especially having two daughters, I feel strongly about this. A few years ago, the Me Too movement was the big thing, and you heard stories of women that were in horrible situations. They did things that they knew they shouldn't have done. They were put in circumstances that never should have happened. Yet they couldn't leave because they needed the salary or the income, or they felt they did. So that's what I tell my daughters too, is having that savings account, having money is basically, you can call it like go to hell money. You get put in a bad situation, you tell that person, I don't have to deal with this, whether it's a bad relationship, a bad boss, whatever it may be. You have options to say, you know what, I'm not doing this. Goodbye, and walking out the door. So it just gives you, to me, that sense of security, of having that. So even like you said, if teachers are on a yearly salary up there, build up that savings. If this principal, for whatever reason, doesn't agree with my teaching philosophy and I get let go, I'm going to be fine. I have enough money. I have enough financial cushion that I'll have time to get my head above the water, breathe, take a couple breaths, and then look for something else.
some of my most favorite colleagues to work with are those that are retired and doing their victory laps, or they've come back from retirement because they are just there to be there and have fun and do what they want to do. They have fulfilled what they needed to fulfill. They know if they walk away, they're fine. It's it's a good message to send to kids in college. It's a good message to send to kids in high school. Start thinking about your budget. Start thinking about what you're doing.
Mhm.
How are we interacting with that mid a middle-aged person who will have debt, will be early 30s, late 30s, get pushing 40. Not aging myself in any way here. How do we work with them to show them that you need to start now and you can start now?
Oh, 100%. There's that, what, the Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the next best time is today. So there's no better time than today to start. So just once again, it goes back to the plan. Have that plan in place. So what do you want to do? If you have a lot of debt, let's start tackling your debt. Come up with a plan on how you can tackle that debt. So maybe you say, you know what, this month I'm going to first go back once again, analyze that spending plan, see how you're spending your money. Say you're able to save $200 a month by cutting out your daily coffee, apply that $200 a month. If you have credit card debt, apply it to that debt, then pay that off faster. And then it just builds that momentum. It's just a financial journey to me is like running a race. It's not like a sprint, it's more like a marathon. So every mile, it can be tough, but you build momentum. It's okay, you get through mile one, then mile two, then mile three, and then you're making traction. You're like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And I think that's the biggest key. Start small. Take those small steps to get small victories. Unfortunately, and especially in education, like we've been brainwashed. Like, okay, if you're a teacher, you're going to be in poverty. You're not going to make much money, this and that. So we're fooled. And then we have people around us, colleagues. Oh, I can't handle money. I'm just in debt. I'll be in debt the rest of my life. It doesn't have to be that way. So when you build small victories, like going on a diet, you go on a diet and you lose 1 pound first week, then 2 pounds. You're motivated to keep going because you're seeing progress. So that's what I would recommend, especially someone in the mid to late 30s. Like if you have struggled, set a goal right now. Let's say, and make it this one pretty achievable. I want to save $100 by next week. Something that you can be like, okay, bam, I have a victory. I can do it. And then you're motivated to keep going forward. And then you make another goal and you just keep building on it. But I think we do have to start small because unfortunately a lot of people they think in their heads, I can't do it. And it's like that student, you build that encouragement at first, hey, you can do this, and you got to do the same thing with yourself.
And it sounds counterintuitive, but it really helped me in one of my journeys here. If you are really struggling to get ahead of yourself, put some skin in the game financially, hire somebody to work with, hire somebody to talk to.
Sure.
It costs you, sure. You might be thinking, why am I spending money to try to save money? When I gotten the best shape of my life, it's because I paid a
There
nutritionist.
you go.
And I knew all of the things that I had to eat. I knew all of the things I had to do. But now that I had some skin in the game and I was like, I'm paying this person, I followed it diligently because I was invested. I invested in myself. And there's nothing wrong with going to a financial advisor and saying, okay, I need to make an investment in myself here. I need to draw my hard line and I need to see where it takes me from there.
100%. It's easy on paper to be skinny and rich, right? Spend less than you earn, eat less than you burn. Very simple. You'll be skinny and a millionaire if you do that. But yet, that crazy thing of life comes in the way. And you mentioned, since you talked about nutrition, I think financial and weight issues, they're very hand in hand. 90% of the problems are behavior based, really. It's very, once again, simple on paper. So we can all do the math on credit card debt if you're paying 28% interest on it, of how much that's going to cost. But then behavior gets in the way. And I think, yes, if you need a coach, a mentor, an advisor, whatever it may be, to have, once again, like you mentioned, skin in the game, then do that. And yes, you may pay a little bit upfront, and you may, like you said, counterintuitive, oh, I'm spending money to do it. But over the long haul, you have to, once again, you have to have that long-term view. It's not just, we're talking about this week. We're talking about, okay, what's it going to look like in a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, by taking on getting that help.
And that's the key right there. And that's how it links back to the elemental educator and the elements and what we're doing. This is within us. This is a behavior. This is a thought. And it's a lot harder in today's world because of our access to technology. We can see more of the world. We can understand more of the world, but we can also be skewed and we can be shocked and we can be put into bad habits based off of what we're exposed to in the world as well. And it's our job to play with that and to see what the world has to offer and to make our own decisions. That's overwhelming, right? You think back to before technology. I don't know what that time was like, but to be able to go throughout a day and not get a notification about anything,
Right.
right?
Well, and when it comes to finances, then it's stacked against us as well, because our social media friends, they had the greatest vacation, they had this, they have that, and that's all we see on social media. Basically, it's like Sports Center's top 10 highlights. It's not. No one ever puts, I had the worst day and I'm in $20,000 of debt. You don't hear that. You just hear these great highlights of the year, of the day. And then it tricks us. And then we're like, oh gosh, they have it. I need to have it. I want to have it. And then we spend money or we do stuff that we shouldn't be doing, because once again, we're trying to please someone else. We're not thinking about ourselves.
I love the clip of the round trip where you see the video of the plane taking off, the plane landing, and then they're in their destination, and when you don't see the 4 hour flight in between
Yeah.
or the 12 hour overseas flight, right? That's exactly what we're alluding to. Is we don't see the struggle that everybody deals with because nobody wants to show that. It's a vulnerability that we want to hide.
Right.
So within this, Danny, what are you hoping that people listening can take into their lives tomorrow?
Sure. I just want to give that element of hope. You mentioned it. A lot of times we're bombarded by some of positive messages, but mainly negative. And I want people to see that they have the power within themselves to make that change. And going back, if this former school teacher can do it, they can as well. Is it always going to be easy? No, absolutely not. But you can do it. You can take control of your finances, no matter how much you make on a teacher salary. If you do the right steps, you do the proper planning, you can. You have it within you. And I think that's just the message I want to share with others is just don't give up. And if you mess up today, get back on your feet and do it tomorrow. Most of your listeners, I'm assuming, are teachers, so they know how it is. Some students have a bad day. You just brush it off and come back tomorrow. We're going to start fresh and we're going to make it work. So take the same path with your finances and just try to keep your eye on the bigger prize. Yes, the day to day can be a grind, but then having those goals, hey, where do I want to be in a month? Where do I want to be in 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years? And then just doesn't have to be every day you're making progress towards it, but hopefully every week, every month you can see, okay, I'm making progress towards achieving my goal, because then that makes you want to keep continuing.
Root yourself in your future.
Yes.
Invest in yourself. Yeah.
100%.
What's
Tough to do. If you think about that, if you could see 50 years down the road, no one would ever smoke a cigarette, right? And people don't, but I'm just saying, you see the damaging effects of some of those commercials that show no one would ever do it, but it's very tough to see your future self. So we live in the here and now. So yeah, root yourself in the future. 100%.
What does your future look like?
Great question. I really have no idea. Just like I said, I just see what happens with life. I never thought I'd be working for a mentor or financial education company. So there's no telling. Right now, I have a daughter that just finished her sophomore year of college. I have another one that will be in college in a year. So I know the next few years will probably be really costly for me. So I know that part of the future. But yeah, just once again, I just try to just live life and just follow the path that's given. So if you just do your best every day, I feel you just do what's right at your current place of employment, opportunities happen. I've had plenty of doors open for me. Probably, I guess, some of my own doing, but really, I don't think so. So I think just if I work hard and do the right things, just opportunities seem to happen. So I think that's what I recommend to others too, is just stay true to yourself and just give your best and see what happens. Enjoy the ride.
You can't be lucky without a little bit of talent and skill, and you definitely make your own luck.
You do. But you also have to prepare for it as well.
Absolutely.
I think John Wooden, UCLA basketball coach, said, if you don't prepare when the opportunity arises, it's too late at that point. So you do have to prepare to take advantage. And people always say, oh, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Well, a lot of times people that don't have money continue to make the same decisions that led them to have no money. And people that have money continue to do the decisions and make the decisions that led them to have money. So they get more. So it just, yes, you do have to prepare. But I do feel once you prepare for it, then more opportunities come your way.
Absolutely. Danny, this has been awesome. I've loved getting to just sit down, have a conversation with you. I've learned so much. I'm ready to go back and start my own. My deal with my school budget. I got to go home and try to see if I can use the same application to do my personal budgeting now and see where I can save a couple dollars here and there. Thank you for your time today.
Hey, thanks, Tyler. Enjoyed it.
You've been listening to the Elemental Educator. Our aim is to illuminate optimal educational practices on a global scale. And second, we want to shine a light on the expertise and knowledge that Tyler brings to educational institutions. He's not just a talking head. He's a practicing educator, a school principal, armed with a master's in educational administration, and on the brink of completing his doctorate. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Elemental Educator. And to contact us, fire off an email. See what I did there? Fire off. Okay. Send an email to elementaleducator@gmail.com. See you next time on the Elemental Educator.